Hello and welcome to H&D Abroad. We are live here today. It's been a long week. We got a great conversation, I think, ready for you today. We want to fill in all the pieces about what we've been doing and where we've been in our trips abroad. Once again, we're H&D Abroad. I'm Herman, known as H, and D was when she's ready. You ready, D? Hold on, get Miss D in. There we go. She is out and about, seeing the world this week. So we are broadcasting from two different spaces, but we are always together. On this channel, we help Black couples see moving abroad as a plan A for a healthy lifestyle and building generational wealth. And we try to do that in real time. So as always, we ask that you
like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Turn on notification bells so that you can know when we upload a new video. We just uploaded a video yesterday about how we packed for this trip. I want to say hello to my sisters in the chat, our regulars. Thank you so much. Donna, Savvy Soldier, Sabangale, thank you for joining. I see you, Yolanda, locating Cozy. Thank you guys so much for joining. Hopefully our sound is good. Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear and see both of us. Let's see. So I want to make sure as we are having this conversation about our first impressions, these are a reflection of our individual experience. Okay.
Yes. This is how we felt about it. This is our experience. Please don't come after us, try to beat us up. But we want there to be an honest conversation. So if you have different opinion, please join in about it. If you have some things, please kick in on this conversation today, because it was really important as we share what we learned on our trip.
Absolutely. And it's nice to see folk in the chat today that have recently been to the places that we're talking about, have experienced either with us during the same trips that we're referencing, or have been there during the same time frame. So if you guys can chime in about your experience in the chat as well, I think that'll be helpful to everyone that's joining. So we're going to try to take it time-wise in two big chunks. So first, we're going to talk about our experience in Marrakesh, Morocco. As you all know, this is my first across the Atlantic international trip. I did a lot of research. H did a lot of research, trying to make sure we understood the culture, how things operated in Marrakesh, Morocco, just to kind of get started. I spent a lot of time in the Exodus Summit Facebook group. Our specific meetup group also had continuous conversations, which was good, because when you're going to a new place and you know someone or people have been there, then yes, it's great to collaborate because you're not out there alone. And so I want to say thank you to Sabangale for joining, because she was actually an unexpected, what do you call that? Collaborator on my journey. We met in Istanbul. We rode the same plane into Marrakesh. So yeah, so H, where did you want to start?
All right. So when you fly into your destination, one of the first things you deal with is how to get from your airport. Transportation. So we want to deal with highs and lows of each factor that we address today. So first thing we want to address, and we addressed with this a little bit in our video talking about our trips from the airport, but transportation in each section is a big deal. When we landed in Marrakesh, one of the things that we knew was we were going to be solicited for rides. Now, unlike a lot of places, there is I wasn't aware that there isn't any ride share opportunities. So you have to take the local taxi cab wherever you have to go, or what was the other ride share that we used, with the couples? You have to book through bigger
Oh yeah,
systems.
you can use booking.com to also find a driver, a private driver. So that was an option that I learned more about once I was on site. But yeah, that's another way for you to get it. But rideshare or taxis are it. Everyone, if you watch any videos about Marrakesh, they say be ready to barter, to haggle for everything, and that includes your taxi. Um, so make sure you have smaller denominations of money. They give you larger bills if you go through the what do you call that? The exchange in the airport. So make sure you've got small enough denominations so that once you set your price, then you know that you can hand them what they expect. Don't try to get change because you're not gonna get it. Anything about navigating the taxis and transportation
Yes,
wanted to add?
everything is a navigation. I'm not sure if this is my computer buzzing here or if that's from your side. D, hold on. Okay, your mic is buzzing a little bit. Check your mic system. Um, um, you have to negotiate your rides. One thing we said in our video about the city is make sure you know what you're willing to pay before you get into the taxi. Negotiate the price for where you're going before you get in the taxi. Unlike rideshare like Uber, you get in, the ride is a certain price to a certain place. That's not the case. You have to. They're going to try to get as much from you as they can on the way to wherever it is you're going. We were really lucky the first night. We actually rode with Sabangale and another rider, and they gave us what I would consider to be a reasonable price. But they're going to, because someone negotiated that price with us from the airport. One of the ride share, one of the taxi driver systems negotiated that with us, and we were able to get a fairer price, we believe. Otherwise, but we went to dinner and we were around the corner from our hotel, and they were trying to overcharge us for a shorter ride. So recognize that they try to charge you for not just the distance you're going, but also for potentially how big a vehicle they're driving. So that's one of the first things. Sabongale mentioned something here I'm going to share, and she said she was supposed to be picked up by the hotel, and that didn't happen. And because we were together, we were able to negotiate a reasonable price. You have to be assertive in dealing with the locals in the community because negotiation is a part of their process. So that's something that you should know. All right. I think Dee's trying to figure out what's going on. Back to us. All right. I can't hear you. Wait, hold on. Let me unmute you. Go.
Yeah. So what I think also is happening is it's a patriarchal society. So you want to be aware that our experience might be different from others because we had a man in our group. I'm not sure. I'm filtering my experience because of that. Um, and we knew that going in, but it occurred at so many different interactions that I want people to be aware that if you are traveling alone as a female, that you're going to have an impact. It is going to impact how you feel about your stay, how you experience Marrakesh. So just be aware. All right. So what's next?
And I think to piggyback onto that, we'll deal with how we were interacted with the locals. A lot of people ask questions about, how were you treated? What was the environment, especially as as Black people? Now, we were in Africa, so we were dealing with people of color, but the protocols and the processes of dealing with people in different cultures can be varied. On our flight, on the second leg of our flight, and I'm using this to segue in because I think that was important to what we learned going forward. On the second leg of our flight, we flew from Turkey into Marrakesh, and we were on a 3-seater. So myself, D, and then a third passenger, a gentleman. And when we got to the airport, when we landed, of course, everybody stands up, ready to go, and the aisles are full, and he wanted to get out. And I told him he had to wait because we also had to get out, and the aisles were full. When we got on the ground and we recognized the negotiation process that happened with the taxi cab, and then when we get to the hotel, we recognized the interaction we were having with the men outside the hotel coming in. I said to the ladies I was with, we're going to have to be a lot more assertive in our approach of dealing with everybody every day, because that is their approach. It's a forward approach. In America, a lot of times when people are aggressive with you, it feels personal. We feel attacked. And balancing understanding between when you feel like you're being pushed around and when people are simply moving in the environment they move in, that was difficult to deal with. And I think especially for Danica and the ladies, because it seemed to be a male-dominated society. How did you feel in that interaction with the others? Did you feel?
Well, to me, I felt I had to step out of my feminine and really lean into what I would consider to be more of a bolder, stronger, masculine energy for a longer period of time. So, that is the energy that I bring as a leader in the workplace. And I really try to give a balance so that that's not a part of my everyday life. I am I am completely feminine. I love leaning into my feminine. But I felt like at every point during the trip, I was having to lean deeper into that, you know, um, bolder, stronger part of my personality. And it was kind of emotionally exhausting to have to do that. So, um, because I always felt like I had to have my guard up. Um, you know, I didn't want to feel taken advantage of, be overlooked, be stepped on, stepped past, and so that is the energy that I had to bring to that interaction. So that also was a filter that impacted my overall view of the trip. Anything else you wanted to add before we jump to the next topic?
Nope, that's a good for now. I think that was good. All right. So let's talk about the weather. Let's let's talk about the weather. The weather is a biggie. Um,
We're there in April, so
well,
just for context,
we were there in April, which we associate with spring. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, it was hot. It was hot in Marrakesh in April. Temperatures upwards of over 100 degrees. Um, I as a native Floridian, I am used to humidity. The air was dry. The sun was direct. Now, for me, direct sunlight, the air was not, the air itself was not oppressive to me because I could step out of the sun and be reasonably okay air wise, but the air was drying. And that direct sun over time was rough on the skin. We wore sunscreen because it was tough on the skin. It was unusual to deal with that dry level of air for me because that's not a part of my history, my knowledge. We live in Alabama, and sometimes even in the drier parts of the season, there's an underlie of humidity here that there's a wetness in the air. There was no wetness in the air; it was just dry. And I think that, especially for you, D, that was an issue for health wise for you, right?
Yeah, I agree with Sandra. I've heard that Arizona, I visited Arizona, but just for a shorter period of time. Las Vegas, like Sandra Scott Voice is saying. So yeah, that dry heat. I have asthma, which can be, pretty stable, but for a long period of time, and the kind of like medicine and I actually backed off of taking a lot of my vitamins that require a lot of hydration because I just it was a fight to stay hydrated. So you've got, the heat, the actual physical, it's 104 degrees, and then the dryness impacting, my body. So that was a challenge, but hey, we navigated it because we were there and we were going to enjoy the trip. But you look for ways to protect yourself, and you have to be intentional about that.
Now, of course, Sabongale likes getting a tan, and I teased her because I think the locals liked her tan too. But yeah, and then that was a concern about. She talks about her mouth and nose drying, because then you're talking about running into nosebleeds and things like that. So that was an issue. That dry air. At night it was fairly nice. The weather was really nice at night. Sunset. I mean, it was great to be out. We spent quite a few nights out strolling because the air. I mean, it didn't. Here at home, if it's humid today, it's humid tonight. Once the sun was gone, then it was really nice out. I mean, there was even maybe slight cooler temperatures in the evening, but there was a vast difference between the middle of the day and the evening. So let's see. Let's move on to, all right. Let's move into our accommodations. Yeah, I'll let you start. Go all
Okay,
in.
so because it seems like my mic is not working really well, so I'll give a high level view. If you follow Rashida Dow on her Rashida Doe channel, she actually did a full review of the Radisson Blue and the experience of the 100 women who attended the Exodus Summit meetup. Um, yeah, so the rooms were beautiful. The riads, we stayed at two different riads. They were just beautiful. The views of the city from both locations. The Yes, and we were there at the end of Ramadan and Eid, so we knew that that might impact some of the service offerings, some of the availability of some of the experiences while we were on the trip. So the places that we stayed were beautiful. The issues that we were having were with the management staff.
Mm-hmm.
So we booked ahead of time. We booked in January. We booked our hotel in January. So they do not give an itemized bill. You might want to call the hotel and get an itemized bill and recognize that just like here in the States, you've got, different tourist and other taxes that may be added. But we, as a group, during the meetup, were consistently having to check our bills because there were items added that were not there. when we were identifying service offerings that were uncomfortable or incorrect, just the approach to customer service um, not just wasn't American, it just seemed to take me as a customer, my concerns kind of for granted. Um, so I felt that there was some navigating. I felt like it was more than culture. I felt like there may have been something else. It definitely, I'm not identifying it as racism. I'm just saying I felt like something else was happening in the approach toward us from management when we were identifying things like in the Riyadh that we stayed in. The first riad was excellent. Where we stayed in the second riad was in an attached guest house, which was at street level. The window wouldn't close, so we could hear them pushing the carts with the metal wheels outside our window, which was about 12 feet away, all night. The call to prayer was right outside our window. Um, so
The
people were
vehicle,
talking because in the
right,
Medina, it is a living situation. It
right,
is a marketplace. But because of where we were located, letting the manager know that the water in the shower backed up. You could tell that that had been an issue. And like usually I would expect, how can we make this right, regardless of the culture? How can
right.
we make your experience better before you leave? Was not offered, but you best believe I'm on those websites saying this was my experience. And so that was the recourse that we took with that. Um,
There
yeah,
was
so just
almost
make
a,
sure you're checking your bill and
yeah,
are aware of
yeah.
that.
Yeah, there was almost what felt like an oh well kind of response to our concerns. When we addressed our concerns with the gentleman at the Riyadh, he was kind of like, oh, and that was it. There was no, we're sorry that, he's just like, he did apologize. I'm sorry that it happened, but there was no, how can we address that? How can we make that better? Because we said, hey, there's a series of things here that's a problem that are probably a problem before we got here, and it made this part of the stay, difficult. You're showering and there's water building up at your feet in a Riyadh. There's nowhere to go. There was no shower area. It was just a shower head in the middle of a floor hole in the bathroom. We're recognizing that that's a part of the cultural space. We're willing to deal with that adaptation, but when your drainage is backing up into my taking a shower, that's an issue. When I say your window is broken, you can't address the fact that people were walking past my window all night. We recognize we're living in a home, in a wall, in a fortress. We accepted that. We recognize that. But it was the fact that that information wasn't available to us to review as a part of the stay. These rooms are closer to the outside of the wall versus the inner rooms, which are protected. And that, when we address it, and we didn't dress it ugly, we didn't come and say, you could have told us this was bad, but it was just kind of like, oh, yeah, oh. And sometimes the responses at the hotel were the same. Hey, I have a need. Hey, I have a concern. And it was kind of like, I can't deal with that for you. I'm sorry you feel that way. I asked for information at the hotel on where to go. What were some of the local restaurants that they would recommend going to? And it was kind of like, you can go down there. It was, I didn't feel welcomed into the, hey, welcome to our city. It was welcome to my hotel. So you can eat here. We have this, we have that. Okay, I recognize that, but I'm going to be out in the streets while I'm out in the street, because I've stayed at the hotels before and said locally what's available. Those hotels often have premier dining, but they'll also say you can find the things you're looking for at these kinds of places. There's also information in the hotel that provides that wasn't available. And that then meant I had to roam to find out what I wanted to find out. I didn't mind going out to search and look, but wandering in a city that I have not been to, when I don't know how far I need to go, that can be a little disconcerting, especially when you're alone.
Yeah, let's see, Savangale made a good point. I think the expectation was it was an American hotel chain. And so because of that, there was an expectation of a similar concierge kind of service. They were presenting in that way when we got there, and just the follow through with that. Yeah, I'm aging grateful. I'm really trying not to think, oh, well, we got your money, but it started to feel, it started to feel that way. So yeah, so that those kinds of experiences, what I want to let you know is usually on when I was looking at videos, I was looking at videos about food, videos about the Medina, videos about, a particular hotel, we're trying to give you kind of that swath of experiences from the time that we left the airport through the 5 days we were there. Mm-hmm. So I just want to make sure that people can see that things run. There's running through. I know that locating cozy mentioned don't jump in a cab until you have negotiated the price before you get in. Like, you have to do that at more than just the taxi.
Right.
When you're in the Medina, and I don't know if you have that as, I think that's one of your bullet points, H, is literally before you do something, before you interact with the monkey in the square, you need to say, I can offer you, or get your henna. And they say, oh, whatever you want to pay me. No, I'm going to pay you this. Is that acceptable before you start your service? So I want people to, that's why we're doing this live, is to kind of give that it's more than just one perspective that you are paying attention to when it comes to how things normally operate in a country that is not your home. So, okay, what's next?
Excellent. All right. So this is another big one. Food. Now, this may not seem big to a lot of people because some people just go and they live in the world, they eat, whatever's local, we do that. So Dia and I have more specialized diets. There are things by choice we don't eat, and then there are things by health concerns we don't eat. And so we are more selective about how we approach what's going to be on our plate. We're not talking about picky. I'm not a picky eater. I think we're more so choosy. I think we're more so choosy. Danika's these diet. She is vegan primarily. She is plant-based. Plant forward is our general approach to eating. So we like a lot of vegetables. We like a lot of root vegetables and fruit, and we love that. And then we want to look for those things. And they had that really, really narrowly. Now, okay, so day one, we have a cooking class and we make tagines. Great experience. Loved it. Loved it. The young people who were our guide and guest chefs, they were our children's age. They were 21 and 22, but they did a great job dealing with a bunch of 50-year-olds who were dealing with them. I mean, had a great time watching and smelling the tagine. Day one. Day two for Danica. What did you have, D?
I had vegetable tagine.
2 days in a row. By day three, she was
tagine again.
She was cussing the system because she was stuck in tagine land. I was trying to be a little more diverse in what was available. And let's be fair. One of the challenges I think in this whole conversation is that at least for me, I was not quite prepared for how much Marrakesh was a tourist area. So I was expecting, and this is addressing the truth of my expectations. I was expecting more of the local content, the local process. Restaurants had on their menus tagines, but they also had on that same menu tacos, hamburgers, and pizza, which meant that even in the tagines that they provided tagines people could recognize, tourists could recognize. They provided food options that were recognizable to foreigners, which then meant I had the same food options on my block every day. One of the best restaurants we went to was actually an Italian restaurant. It's okay, but I honestly didn't go to Morocco for Italian food. I went to Morocco for Moroccan food. And I don't think I got a chance to tap into as much Moroccan food because I think the touristy area we was in limited what we had. How do you feel, Dee? I know the challenge was even bigger for you.
Well, I did specific searches for vegan options in Marrakesh. So you do different combinations of that in I used Happy Cow. I used YouTube. So people were going down the list of how to eat outside of the vegetable tagine, couscous vegetable tagine. And so we went with Bondole. I was so happy Wednesday, the night that we went to get Thai food, because I was like, I can finally have another carbohydrate that's not couscous. So, doing that legwork ahead of time, especially when you know you have specific needs, like get on it, learn it. What I did not do this time that I normally do is I look for the grocery stores because I can also meet my needs that way. Because as long as I can find a grocery store, I know I can use a microwave or, do something to that effect to meet my nutritional needs. And so part of this was I felt overwhelmed because I was planning so many different pieces of the process that I left out some critical ones that I didn't find out about until like day 4, day 5 before we left. So I, I'm yeah. So the food that we ate was good. It was, but what made this whole experience navigate. We were able to navigate it with joy, with appreciation for the space we were in, is because the people that we made friends with along the way on the trip. So I always say, even if you've not been to a place before, make some contact with people. Because I had asked a girlfriend that lives there, hey, where can I go? And she gave me a list of stuff, and literally we were just going down the list after day 2 to start eating at those places.
All right. Excellent. Let's see if I missed any comments here. Where are we? All right. So I had 2 different things, but I'm going to make them under one. Attractions. And I'm going to add shopping into this component. Okay. So the ladies, because of their group trip, got to see a lot of things. Travel for me is about the exploration of a native place and the beauty of the history, just sometimes in just walking up and down streets. So I like to wander up and down the streets, the way the buildings are made, the beauty and the history and the colors, and the ladies were taking pictures of themselves in doorways, and I think Nicole D will tell you about that later. And that, I'm not sure if I could find anybody's city to be undesirable, simply because the history of their cities are built into the dynamics of how they design things based on their culture and their background, the mosque structures, when we were in the Riyadh. Okay, so I did not understand the Riyadh until I was at the Riyadh. I told you again, some things for me aren't visual fully until I'm there. When we got to the first Riyadh, and the taxi cab dropped us off at the meeting place, and the gentleman who was coming from, I said, I'm going to come get you. And then he came and got us, grabbed a couple of our bags, and we walked into the Riyadh, down through the caverns and wallways. That was just amazing to me, because you're literally in the street going into the old town, and people are driving by you like you're not standing there in cars and on mopeds and bicycles, and everybody's in a hurry. It's like deciding to go through the flea market on your way to your hotel. I mean, it's just busy, but the colors of the wall, the doors, knowing that those were leading into shops and homes and museums and restaurants, that was amazing to me. And then where the Riyadh was deep, when we went deep, there was no way I was going to turn around and walk back out on my own. I was really glad for the guide. And that's something else we'll address in a minute too. I was really glad for the guide, for the fact that he came and got us, because where it was set up and where we were, it was just, and then to get into this little, it's almost like a hidden hotel space, this hidden paradise, this hidden oasis that's inside this area, with these beautifully decorated rooms and these small waiting pools and the open tops and the terraces. That's amazing. And then there's the Medina, which is a part of that whole system, but it's a life of its own. It's a life of its own. And it ties into that negotiating we were talking about before, that whole piece about everything is negotiated. So just give you two different pieces. We bought some beautiful caftans, which we will take pictures of ourselves in and post. We bought these beautiful caftans at the local mall, which was down below our hotel. We paid a reasonable price for it, but we paid for them. Okay. But it was the price it was. We got it. We paid for them. We left. Okay. On the end of our trip, we were down in the Medina at night with a couple of other people who were visiting, and we negotiated two more caftans. Our Exodus life used the phrase earlier, that sounds exhausting. That's exactly what it is. I was tired by the end of the time and we paid far less for those than we paid for the ones we bought at the mall area. But it was like, we paid the price. We paid the price because we bounced back and forth between two different vendors trying to get a fair price for, to be fair, products which were less quality than the ones we bought at the mall, but they were handmade. They were on the street. It was like, wanting to get it. There were a couple of leather bags I was looking at. Once we got finished with those caftans, I was like, everything else, they can keep that. That is not my approach to purchasing items. Dee, you feeling different about it?
Look, I knew going in that, they said it is a part of their culture to barter, to, for that kind of interaction. I just, I can't do that for everything. I can't do that for the taxi, and then for my food, and then for, for gifts, for gift items. I just, it was just emotionally exhausting, because what you have to pour in to the process to push people away because you know what you want, but also to say, look, I know better and you know better. And my friend, literally, we knew them for what, maybe 6 hours?
Oh yeah.
And I
Yeah.
mean, like, she was just like, this gives me so much energy. I was like, this is what we want to pay. Help me find it. And, so
Yeah.
if you want to do interactions in parts of the world where that is, maybe decide to go with someone or decide, hey, these specific items, I'm going to do that kind of negotiation. And then everything else, I'm just going to, you know, look, unless it's a ridiculous price, I'm just going to I'm going to accept what you pay. Because I knew I probably wasn't going to like it, but for sure, I was sure about that. The attractions are beautiful. We went to oh goodness, Yves Saint Laurent Gardens. You got to get your tickets early, like weeks in advance. We went through a tour company, so it was easier for us to do that. Um, Yes, the doorways are what we loved. Savvy Soldier asked about us sharing pictures. We have started sharing them on our page. So we did some drive-throughs of the Medina. I'll be adding the Riyadh pictures and uh, Janae Thompson, the specialty hotel. It's a boutique hotel owned by a Black French woman. She and her husband moved to Marrakesh, and that's where we had our couples cooking experience. So we'll be sharing the interview with her this week, but we wanted to whet you all's appetites to, kind of what was the behind the scenes things happening. Airbnb experience when you don't have a tour company, I think it is the
Mm-hmm.
most straightforward way to handle doing a hot air balloon ride like Sabangale did, for taking a cooking class, making your own argan oil, shopping, getting a guided tour of the shops in the Medina. Um, the, so I want to say one thing before we move on about the attractions. There are, for those of us who are sensitive to animals,
Mm-hmm.
camel riding is, getting a camel ride is a popular amusement in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my colleague that helped me get my kaftan was like, that just breaks my heart. Um, the monkeys in the Medina, people want to hold them and take pictures with them. Please be aware that you will be asked for payment. Negotiate that payment before you interact with the animal. They do the snake charming in the
Mm-hmm.
Medina. If you are taking pictures with that, please expect and negotiate how much you're going to pay before that interaction occurs. So I'm just, people are excited, but you want to think this is a way that they are making their living. And there are people that are asking for help, asking for support. Mothers and children are in these spaces as well, asking for money. So please, take that into consideration when you are planning your trip. All right, what's up next?
All right. This is one that always is a question: is safety. Did you feel safe? Okay. So the design of the city being what it is, there were areas. Okay, let's back up. In general, I did not feel unsafe in general. Okay. But there were areas, just like any other large city, I would not be in without a guide, a chaperone, a local, or just not be there. There were areas we were floating down through the Medina with the young couple we were with that night, And I was like, that's as far as we're heading down that way. I don't like what's down there. I don't like the way that looks. I'm not going down there. That's a natural cautionary thing. Did I feel accosted as a person, as a Black person? Did I feel afraid going down streets to shop? Not necessarily. Nothing gave me pause for any reason to believe I was in danger. Would I recommend, and maybe this is just my old school Southern boy self, would I recommend single women walking alone, walking through some of those spaces?
Would you recommend your wife or your daughter? Maybe use that context.
I would not. There were places I would not send my wife or daughter at night alone. The aggressiveness of the general male population, not harassment wise, but the male dominated population and their approach to life. I would not feel safe with them walking through a space they were unfamiliar with in Marrakesh alone. That would make me uncomfortable. I know some very independent ladies who can manage that, and I don't decry that. Do it. Got it. Go for it. I would not want Dee walking through some of the spaces we walk through together alone. That would make me uncomfortable, because I felt that some of them did not have clear direction, and some of those spaces she might not have backup if something went the wrong way. How did you feel safety wise?
Yeah, I was glad to navigate that space with other people. I was also glad to have you on the trip, especially when I was separated from the Exodus Summit ladies. So I know that going by myself alone would never happen. But I might go with a group of friends, and I would go with my male partner, but definitely not alone.
Okay. All right. Last question for this section before we hit to Spain is, would you visit again, and would you consider it for relocation? Marrakesh. Ladies first.
No and no.
Okay.
No for relocation, and I think it was a good experience, but I think I can officially check Morocco off of my list for
Okay.
visit.
I would potentially visit Morocco again. I don't know about Marrakesh, because I didn't see enough that I still might want to see other parts of Morocco to see what is like. I have heard, even from some of the people who worked in Marrakesh who weren't natives of that city, who said, you should come to my city. It's not the same where I live in Morocco and the other parts of Morocco than there. Relocation, probably not. All right.
Let's see. Aging Grateful asked, would you recommend Marrakesh?
I as a vacation trip, I think I would recommend just about anywhere. If you have a chance to visit. Go with knowledge. Go with information about what the experience might be like. Because again, navigating some of where we worked from, and possibly some of the expectations they had seeing us as Americans, which is a thing. Because I think you got Americans come by from us kind of thing. They knew we were American. They approached us in English. They followed us through the Medina trying to get us to buy things because we were American. That's a part of the touristy era we were in. I would recommend it for visit. I don't know if I could say enough about it to say I would recommend it as a place you would potentially look to live. But then I was in one area.
Yeah, locating cozy. Yolanda actually was in Rabat at the same time we were in Marrakesh. She actually did a house sit there, and I think she also said that she visited Casablanca. So you're looking, if you love geography like I love geography, if you're going up the coast, you've got Casablanca, Rabat, and Tangier. So those are also really great places, and it looks like she had a good experience there. So yeah, just for visiting, I agree, Agent Grateful, that um, it's a good place. I did not get my hammam, y'all. I wanted my scrub, and I did not get it. That's probably the only reason I would go back is for that. And then I missed Savanga's call telling me that we could go on the hot air balloon with them. And so that was another experience that you can book through Airbnb experience. You don't have to go through a tour company. But those are things I probably would do again because she said it was fabulous.
All right. Excellent. Let's jump to Sevilla, Spain. I'm going to skip the transportation one because rideshare is available. That made it easy. There's Uber, all that's available. We'll skip that one because it was available. And there's loads of transportation, bus systems, lot of bus systems, lot of taxi cabs. There was a lot of transportation. That was a good thing. Let's start with the weather.
It was still hot. What I heard, let's see, so Exodus Summit participants left from Marrakesh. A good group of them went to Lisbon, Portugal. I think there was actually a heat wave coming through. So we all had that 100 plus, upper 90s, low 100-degree weather during that time. So we spent the next week in Sevilla, Spain, which is we actually, it wasn't a scouting tour, but we lived like and did things like we were locals while we were there. So it wasn't necessarily structured like what we would do with a scouting trip, but yeah, the weather was hot, but there was more moisture in the air. It's not a desert. I mean, so yeah.
There was a lovely undercurrent breeze that was there consistently. The second day we were there, the temperature was close to 107 degrees. It did not feel, again, it did not feel burning heat to me. Our Airbnb was on the third floor, and we were out on the balcony on the terrace, and I wasn't uncomfortable with the heat level of the sun. But as soon as we went down to the floor level, to the ground level, I'm sorry, there was a breeze running through the buildings. And I think that also had to do with not just the location of the city, but also the design of the city. Because wherever we walked, that kind of flowed through that.
Yeah, Savvy Soldier Don is asking how long we were there. We were there for 5 days. So that's why it could be a scouting trip. It was kind of like a tourist view of Sevilla, but we really tried to live like a local while we were there, moved around the city like a local. So yeah.
It was really pleasant at night. Really
it's
pleasant.
Also near, I mean, if you know the geography, it's near a river, so you can see why the temperature impact might be different.
Right. All right. So accommodations. All right. Oh, you see that? That's what you want an expression to be about. Okay. So I'm going to try to describe it because, I'm a descriptive guy. All right. So this lovely wife of mine found this Airbnb. Third floor. Okay. So first we catch the Uber from the airport, which takes us to our Airbnb, which is about 20 minutes away. And when he gets to our area, the streets narrow down. So he's trying to get back to this little road. And we're all like, literally they're like doorway away from the walls on both sides. We're like, what little back alley did we end up in? And we get to the door. As soon as he drops our suitcases, he takes off. So we're standing in the middle of this alleyway at this door trying to tap into the system. We tap in, we get in. There's a first, short stairway to the elevator. I got to tell about the elevator. We got this big suitcase. We get under this elevator, and the elevator is literally the size of like a linen closet. So we're literally in this little elevator. So we're already worried. We get upstairs. We're on the 3rd floor. There were 2 apartments roughly each floor, except for the floor we were on, which was the only apartment. And across from our stay was a community terrace. We will put the pictures up of all these places. Great little place. It had the community terrace. It had its own balcony. And we found the day before we left, a hidden.
The secret terrace.
The hidden
Y'all,
balcony that they didn't even tell us about in the Airbnb announcement. It was so great. So, we had private places to sit and watch and look in the city. And the first morning we got up, I walked out. I was talking about the weather. I walked out into the main terrace and walked out there. In the air, I could smell the spices of the city. We're not talking about I could smell people cooking. I could smell the spices of the city. It reminded me when we got to Mexico, because I could smell the spices in the air. And I could smell from the rooftop the paprika and the coriander. Sorry, I'm a chef. But I could smell the spices in the air. And it was a great accommodation. It was, even though we were near tourist areas, it was always quiet where we were. On the roof, in the apartment, it was always quiet. It was a great location. As a matter of fact, even walking through into the more touristy level areas away from the where we were staying, it was never noisy, even when it was busy. How did you feel about the accommodations?
well, I chose it because it had a rooftop. I fell in love. Y'all, when wherever we move is going to have a rooftop, garden area, terrace, because Marrakesh made me fall in love with that. What you can do at night, the beautiful flowers and gardens you can have in those spaces. You just get a different experience of the city. So when I found it and saw that they had that accommodation, so I was really happy to see, we may do a video, but I know that our Black Utopia has done some really good videos on how to choose an Airbnb. Even though they're talking about Lisbon, a lot of those things about the size and space of the room, they talked about in that video, so we'll link that as well. But the accommodations were excellent, very clean. The city was clean. It was very walkable. So I've had a little bit of trauma and at night in small places like alleys before. When I realized that that's the way the city is laid out, and like people are so chill in Spain, in Sevilla, I was just like, oh, because we're GPSing to go get churros, and it was taking us. I was like, oh, I kept trying to get it to take us to like the main street, and I was like, no, these are the main streets. People are driving in what we in the U.S. might call an alleyway. So yeah, those are the accommodations. Don't judge a book by its cover. In Marrakesh, the way that a riad is set up, it is intentional to be very plain, very simple on the outside, and then the beauty is really on the inside. So take a look at those pictures to make sure you understand the space that you're getting.
Okay. The locals. Okay, so here, and I've been trying to avoid using comparisons. Here's where Mexico spoiled me in terms of both of these places. The Mexicans, everything was kind of like, hey, hugs. Like, how can we help you? The people in Sevilla that we encountered, where in Marrakesh, I thought that the customer service in places like restaurants, they were very accommodating, they were very nice. It felt a little more neutral in Sevilla. There was more English. There was English in both spaces, so I didn't have to fight, the language and whatnot. But it was a little more. There wasn't a warmth. I didn't experience a warmth in any of the space in dealing with the people. People were polite. There were even people who were friendly. We're talking about the overall impression. There's a warmth I got in Mexico, just in general, just a general warmth of personality. And I hate to use this as a word. Sevilla was a little more, where we were in Sevilla, and let's be fair, felt a little more bougie. It wasn't sedity. Nobody had their nose raised in the air. It wasn't anything like that. But it was like the young lady at one of the restaurants we bought from. She started talking English to me. She just ended in Spanish. She just and it wasn't like, in Mexico, we kind of like trying to figure each other out. There's a lot of hand pointing and gesturing. She was just like, I'm speaking Spanish to you. And you just pay attention till you figure out what I'm saying. And it wasn't rude. It was just, that's just what it was. I have mixed feelings about that because, again, you've heard me say, I want to accept people in the space that they're in. I'm trying to adapt to their space, but there's a give and take. If I'm working in my restaurant, in my cooking space, and someone comes in and they want something different than what I have, I'm having a conversation with them about what I can and cannot do and why. There's a conversation. I felt that in Mexico, there was that attempt at a conversation. In Spain, not so much. It was just kind of, what you see is what you get. This is what it is. Hope that you like it. Thank you for coming out. It was even. That was my impression.
Let's see. So yes, this is okay. So this is why I would classify it as a higher end side of town. The menus were in English, so that they are accommodating an English-speaking population. There was some, like, I love gelato, y'all. I just forgive me. The guy at the gelato place said, he didn't have an extensive English vocabulary, but he did, and we noticed that in several places where even with a basic English understanding that and our limited Spanish, that they could assist, and so there was an attempt to try. It was just a different feel. So as we are traveling internationally, as I said before, this is a new process. The more I do, I think the more I'll be able to understand how to navigate it. But when you go to these areas where it is a lot of English speaking, you're not going to get as much of the culture of the city. Mm-hmm. So there's a little bit of give and take there. But overall, I felt like the locals accommodated.
Right.
There wasn't necessarily a welcome. Yeah, and also I have to say it was more difficult to make contact with some of, y'all, we do the Facebook groups for local expats, and I wasn't able to get together with our local friends in the area. So I think also our experience might have been, what do you call that, tainted by, being able to talk to people who actually live there that could have given us more of that local insight.
Okay. All right. You my food. Few more options. A few more options. It was a big deal for me that we tried to find the opportunity to have a paella, and we had the opportunity to have a paella, a vegetable paella, at a little shop down near the it just went right out of my head. What was the name of the tourist? Okay, yeah, we'll put pictures of about it again. And it was a lovely meal. Again, I think overall, and again, I think, to be fair, I think in these instances it has more so to do with what our diet is than what was available. I think there were a lot of food options available that we actually tapped into a few more local cuisines and the little shops. Now, that's a piece I'm going to put in here because that's something that I think is important. Our flight, the day before, the flight that when we arrived late at night, 11:30 at night, which means we didn't get to bed till early morning, which means we didn't get up till almost close to midday. And then by the time we got ourselves together and got out, what we forgot was that the siesta was in place, which means 99.9% of all restaurants were closed. And
The kitchen was closed, not the restaurant.
well, correct. The bars were open. The bars were open. The kitchen was closed in a lot of places. Some did not open until after 6 p.m. and some for the day at all, and some closed early and then reopened at like 8 p.m. We were able to find a pizza place that was open and had a lovely pizza, an excellent pizza. But we were more prepared. And then that night, it was after 8 o'clock before we ate. That was an amazing thing to view as well. Being from larger cities, I'm used to city life going deep into the night, if not all night. I've been living here in Alabama a long time, and Alabama goes to sleep at sunset. And then the taverns, or whatever you want to call them, they close at 8 o'clock. I mean, everything goes quiet at 8, 9, 10 o'clock here. In the city we're in, because it's growing, it's just starting to have more places that stay open later, but they still close early. In Sevilla, at 8 o'clock, it's like the world began. The city started. So we walked through an area that was, imagine a large, round courtyard. And in this courtyard were all these restaurants on the outside, mostly bars that served food. And in the middle of this courtyard were all these tables, and they were full of people having drinks. And in the very center of that courtyard was a playground at 10 o'clock at night, full of kids playing. And we're talking about a school night. We're talking about the middle of the week. And their parents are sitting at the bars. It's quiet. It's a busy buzz, but not an uproar kind of thing. And kids are full at play at 10 o'clock at night. And that was beautiful to me. That was great. The air was crisp and cool, and there were a lot more mosquitoes in Sevilla. At least they were after me. But it was great being out at night. And then with all those people being out, we went back to our location when we went back late at night, and it was quiet where we were. And everything we ate, I enjoyed. I think that it made it a little easier for you to have a few more options. We had pastries, we had pizza, we had the paella. I don't even remember all the things we tried. The beauty of Airbnb.
I'm going to shout out the Black Panther. We had smoothies and wraps. So there were a lot more options that that were available that could accommodate my palate. I want to go through a couple of the questions that were asking about the siesta. And Yolanda is also kind of, I'm calling her an expert because she's been to other parts of Spain, like Zaragoza and Madrid. She can tell on the weekends. We were only there during the week. And so that we saw tour groups during the week. And yes, they were taking the siesta between 2 and 6 during the week, but she can maybe speak to what happens on the weekends. Yes, that siesta does include the food establishments. I was kind of surprised by that. I thought they would be open, but they were not. So I did. We did not get over to Portugal. So if some of our friends that are joining from Exodus Summit can tell us if if the same applies in Portugal, that would be helpful as well.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Lost my. Okay. Attractions. Again, same thing applies here that I said about Marrakesh. The city is history. So literally, we're walking up and down the streets, just videoing space, just videoing space, just taking pictures of buildings. We took pictures in front of like every fancy door. We have door pictures. We're gonna do just a slideshow clip of just us in front of doors. The doors were great because you had two kinds of doors. You had big opulent doors that closed, and they were, designed wooden doors. And then you had these like shop doors, which are like the old slide garage doors. And a lot of them had mural paintings on them, which were gorgeous. And again, down these small roads, the GPS was taking us down these alleys and down these back roads. But all of those were streets. And where we have street names on the little signs, their street names were on the buildings. And as we figured that out, we got more adventurous, more so than the day than at night. But, we walked, like almost 3 miles, 2.5, 3 miles to look for churros down back alleys in the middle of the night at like almost midnight. So that'll tie into the safety question. At no point did I feel unsafe going to find any of the attractions or things we wanted to see. It was unfamiliar at first. It was, because anything off of Main Road here, I'm not walking around the back way through the back of an alley, what appears to be an alley or back of a building. But that's where some of the gyms were we found, some of the little shops we found that we looked into, even if we didn't buy anything. A lot of those shops are around those corners and freeways. It reminds me of the Greasy Spoon kind of situation where I'm from. The best hole in the walls are a hole in the wall.
I think you have transportation on here as well. You can rent bikes in Spain, and we didn't get a chance to do it because we walked along the river, but we wanted to bike. But you could see people in groups, multiple generations, like what we saw in Mexico, grandparents and grandchildren, adult parents, their parents and their babies they're pushing in the buggy. It was just beautiful to see that family, that visible family connection. That means a lot to us, and to see that there are places in the world where that intergenerational living is happening during the regular work week, kind of confirmed that that's a place I'd love to consider.
Okay, which leads me to our final question. Would you visit again, and would you consider for relocation? So I'll answer first. And the reason I'm answering first is because this was Dee's trip. This was me exploring a trip that she was in a city that she was very interested in. Um, I want to be honest and say I've had my apprehensions about Spain, about any place in Europe being a relocation place. Um, I think historically they've gotten away with some things that we are trying to address in the States. And moving from here does not necessarily always, I have my apprehensions about whether or not things would be different for me. Ignoring me is not better than addressing me inappropriately. If I'm being ignored, then what's the difference? I'm still not important. I'm still not. And so I wanted to see how I felt in the space. I want to say, in the time that we were there, at no point did I feel discriminated against, dismissed, or ignored. I wasn't there long enough to make a bigger synopsis of that, a bigger opinion about that. But in the time I was there and the interactions that I had, nobody tried to run me over. No cop looked at me crazy. Nobody followed me around the store. Any of the things that are part of the disease of being an American Black man. I didn't experience that. I thought the city was beautiful, just absolutely just beautiful. Without a doubt, I would visit again because I want to see it in a greater expanse. We tried to spend a little time with the AG3 family, but their schedules couldn't meet with ours. So I'd like to get there and meet with some people who can show us around. Would I consider it for relocation? Right now, it's potentially still on the table because I don't know enough to say no. There was nothing negative enough about it. It was a nice, reasonable sized city with things going on. Things seemed to be within the general capacity of being able to get around. There were options that were food, that were travel, that were clothing, that were, recognizable and unrecognizable. So it's on the table. That's my comment. It's all yours.
Well, I can say I had what I would consider a positive visit. Um, Fresh fruits and vegetables are important to me. We went to an Aldi. We went to I think it's DIA, DIA.
Mm-hmm.
And, the bodegas, I think that's actually what they were called, or bodegas, were, easily accessible. It fits with the kind of lifestyle that I want, and that is, the siesta, I need that during my day. Literally, it feels like my body is calling for get up at a reasonable hour, do some work, take a reasonable break, come back, to tie things up, and then prepare for fellowship, and being outdoors. And there's a culture for that in Spain. I was really surprised, that I I was at ease a lot faster. So I didn't go. I guess I should preface this with I did not go out alone at night, but I could go. I felt like if I wanted to go to the Dia, which was literally around the corner from where we live, that I could go pick up, some chips and ice cream if I wanted to, and I would feel comfortable in the well-lit alley that was, regularly walked. It was just a regular area, and I could move about that space without concern for my safety, and that just little things like bookstores and coffee shops. I love that. Oh, also, I found that was important to me that, like I said, I integrated some of the scouting elements. We looked at how much apartments cost. It is pricier for the area that we were actually in, but I know that moving a little bit farther out of that downtownish area, that the prices might be more comparable. Um, the food prices were reasonable to the budgets, as we put together our budget. The euro, was strong, so we have to consider how that will impact what we do. Let's see, I'm trying to remember the last piece of deciding about the city, the 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 vibration of the city had had a sense of calm, easy, and ease that are important to me. So I think it is a place that I would visit again. I'm getting some pointers from some of my other Exodus Summit sisters that have been to Spain to make sure that I include Zaragoza, Alicante, Valencia, and Madrid. But we know that we definitely need more time. But the fast train options are there for travel. I still would not drive, um, even in Sevilla, because you got to have all kind of parallel parking skills. That I'm good, but like they were parking in a shoebox, y'all. Like it was tight, but they were doing it. So I I love a city that embraces nature, embraces family, and I think that matches up well with the criteria that I have set for a place. And I've located like at least 3 to 4, what do they call, co-op spaces, so that I could have reliable internet, a place to meet with clients, and to do business. That the prices were reasonable for drop-ins as well as, kind of the monthly service fees. So those things were important. Because I need to be able to do business in the city. Public transportation. We did not ride the public transportation, but it was running. The time frame that they ran and the regularity that they ran, the Sabangale were enough for me to feel like, and we looked at the prices, so it was like 50 cents. It was really reasonable, equating it back to US dollars. So you could do Uber, but that's going to be pricey anywhere. So I would feel comfortable because the public transportation was clean, it was regular, it was accessible for the places that we were.
I would even say it was really frequent. There were buses going down little roads. Dee talking about she wouldn't drive. In both of these cities that we visited, over time, eventually I would drive. Marrakesh seemed a little chaotic, but once you realize the flow of what they're doing, you could actually drive that city. It wasn't the chaos that was Mexico City, but if you could figure out the flow of what they're doing, you could drive that. My fear in Sevilla was that there's just these little bitty roads, but there were large city buses driving down these little roads, and as she said, everybody was driving these Mini Coopers, and they were parallel parking in ways people in the north would be envious about. So, yeah.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you all for your questions, for your comments in the chat. These trips, whether they are official scouting trips, they're giving us experience with just basic travel, to see what the cost is. Do we want to move so far that, it's going to take us over, a couple of $1,000s to come back to the States?
Right.
Just building in the padding that you need, but also navigating the space as just a human being. Do I feel safe? How do I feel as a Black person? How do I, are things accessible walk-wise? Because, I don't want to have a car to navigate the space and to have options. And then could this be a place for me as a family person and fit with the lifestyle that I want? So please like, share, give us feedbacks in the comments. If you're joining in the future, thank you. Put hashtag replay. Thank you, Sandra's Got Voice, for subscribing.
Absolutely.
We're literally, that is what this channel is about. We are documenting our journey. We're giving feedback on the places that we are visiting based on our list of criteria that we're using. You can look a couple of videos back. We'll link it here for you to kind of see what our criteria are and why we're leaving the U.S. Thank you so much to my compadres from Exodus Summit that went to Marrakesh. Baby, we are doing this thing in this space because there are options everywhere. And we hope that you are taking those opportunities in your life to see what your life could be wherever you desire in the world. Have a good rest of your Saturday, everyone.
Have a good one. Thank you always.
Bye for now.
Bye.